I've been raising my own potatoes in grow bags for many seasons now, and I typically replant from the previous season's harvest. If you save a few, hold them back, you can replant them. And here in Austin, Texas, we have 2 planting times beginning in late February. You want to get those in, and then again mid to late August for a fall harvest. That one's a little bit trickier because it's hot. If you keep the potatoes too wet, they'll rot. I'd like to cultivate them in the warmer times of year under this little hoop structure under some shade. It also gets shaded about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It starts to get, shady for the rest of the day here. So that's a good level of exposure for them, in my opinion, especially when we're talking about for a late summer planting of potatoes. In the spring, you can probably get them started in a sunnier spot, and they do need at least 6 hours of sun to grow and develop. If you're new to the channel, I'm Scott from New Garden Road, always out here to inform, inspire, and elevate you. Encouraging biodiversity and restoring habitat is my mission, one garden at a time. Sourcing certified seed potatoes in late summer can be difficult. It's best to order them well in advance of your planting time, but even so, we don't grow them for a fall harvest in all areas. In this case, organic store-bought potatoes can work, but sometimes it can be difficult to get them to sprout. Certified seed potatoes offer many advantages, number one being they're not going to be treated with growth inhibitors like those that you will find in the store. This isn't to say that you can't grow from organic store-bought potatoes, but it's not a sure thing that you'll be able to get them to sprout. In addition to that, seed potatoes are going to be of higher quality, disease-free, and there are so many unique varieties that you can explore. Potatoes mature in 70 to 120 days depending on the variety. And as we're focused on growing through the fall in this video, it's important to note that they should be harvested prior to a hard freeze. And for this reason, I think early to mid-season varieties are a good choice for fall plantings. But can you save potatoes from your spring harvest for replanting? I save a lot of seeds for my garden, but this is different. Yet it's similar to how I clonally propagate my garlic and sweet potatoes each year. After a beautiful spring harvest of potatoes last year, I set some aside. Later in the summer, I replanted some of those, but I also experimented with storing some in my shed until the next season started. After waiting until early January to harvest some of those that I did plant, the cycle continued as I held some back for planting the following March. But going back to those that I overwintered in my shed, this was a fun experiment, and I did it in a couple of different ways. Number one was with a grow bag. I put those potatoes pretty close together because I wasn't planning on them growing, and I covered them up with pine straw to give them an additional layer of insulation, and then I put them in a dark corner of my shed. The other way that I did it was with a cardboard box. Essentially, I put some potting mix in there, some potatoes, covered them up, closed up the box. I didn't think about them or look at them again until the following spring. Now, when I planted those potatoes, they were really shriveled up, but they were also sprouting, so they had a really good start on them, and I just went ahead and gave it a shot. Potatoes are very susceptible to viruses, so it's important that you rotate your crops, and you're going to need to acquire new seed potatoes as needed. My friends over at Lone Star Nursery out in Maine or Texas have a t-shirt, and it says in Latin, essentially, listen to the plants speak. I feel like potatoes are pretty forgiving in their growing culture. I should have harvested these in bags probably 2 months ago at least. So when I saw the potatoes were sprouting in these grow bags, I thought, it's time to grow these potatoes. Of course I should have harvested them already, that's beside the point. But what I ended up seeing is that I have some that didn't sprout, and that's my harvest. Luckily they didn't rot. And the ones that did sprout and are on a good sized potato, you want at least 4 ounces of potato to get started. I'm going to replant those. I'm going to take the potting mix that I grew them in and amend it with some fresh compost and put them right back in there straight away, because I'm essentially at least 2 weeks ahead of the recommended planting time, but it makes sense to me. If they're ready to grow, I'm going to let them grow. And one thing that is key in this process, I think, is being careful with the moisture. The potting mix, if it's got a relatively good amount of moisture in it, don't mess with it. Let them get growing, and if you pay close attention, if you listen to them, they'll tell you when they need water. You can see the Yukon Gold is sprouting, and I just wanted to bring you in on this, make an impromptu video, share this with you, because growing potatoes is one of my favorite things. And I was disappointed in myself for not harvesting, but all things considered, it's worked out really just well, and I'm excited because not only do I have some potatoes that I'll be able to eat, but I've got a jump start on the next growing season, which is really important to me. Consider supporting this work by signing up for my Patreon, and together we can sow the seeds of sustainability for many seasons to come. What I want to do is try to preserve these potatoes that have gotten their sprouts started, because that's energy going into that sprout, right? So I'm just kind of using my fingers as a sieve. See, that's a nice start on my next potato plant right there. I don't have to do the chitting, the sprouting inside. No way, just gonna get these going in another grow bag and they'll be off to the races. All right, you see how small this one is? I don't know about trying to grow this one out. It might work. Maybe I should experiment. Otherwise I could eat it, which I guess there's not much weight in that either. But in my experience, planting out the smaller potatoes hasn't yielded the strongest, best plants. That's kind of coincides with a lot of planting practices, but nonetheless, there it is. There's another one. There's two more here. Ooh, feels like a big old potato right there. Third little spud. Cool. That looks pretty good. It's a nice looking potato. Did pretty good with these Yukon Golds. As long as your crop does appear to be disease-free, you can reuse the potting mix. I put mine through a sifter to remove any roots or additional potatoes that I might find. Years ago, I made this one from some cedar boards and 1/4-inch hardware cloth, and it fits perfectly over my Gorilla cart. Adding Microlife and all-organic biological fertilizer is the next step, followed by some sifted compost from a resting finished pile in my backyard. A digging fork with wide tines is great for mixing everything together. And now I'm ready to fill up my grow bags and plant some more potatoes. Now, how many you plant per bag is really up to you. I think you give them more growing space, they can size up better, but sometimes it just depends on your resources, what you have available. I've got two good looking Yukon Gold, so I'm going to saddle those up next to one another. I've done as many as 4 in one grow bag. And I probably did 3 in most of these initially. Now this potting mix has got a relatively good amount of moisture in it, so I'm not gonna be watering these after I get them in. I'm going to move them back up to the location under the shade cloth until we really break under 90 degrees, probably around late October, early November, at which point hopefully these will be maturing because they're gonna have all of August, September, October to get growing, and I may end up adding additional soil, which is called hilling or dirting up. For right now, I'll be planting them around 4 to 6 inches deep. And I'm gonna add mulch to the top. That's going to protect the soil. All those nutrients and the microbes from the compost will be shielded from the sun. And it will also help the soil to retain the moisture that it has. And I will wait till the point when they start to really put on new foliage and are growing before I will give them additional moisture. So yeah, listen to the potatoes. When the potatoes want water, they're gonna let you know. Now check out more awesome gardening videos on my channel, like this video, and follow New Garden Road for weekly content. You can grow your own potatoes in grow bags. Keep it organic.